Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now this feels like a bit like the American Pie reunion, maybe without some of the stories from that film, but we're getting back together with the legend that is Vince Rugari. He is, just to refresh your memory, the Sydney Morning Herald sports reporter. He's basically the number one founding member of the Ange Supporters Club, and we spoke to Vince all the way back June, Vince, when Ange to Celtic first kind of became a reality.
Must have been something like that, yeah. Good to be back with you, Hamish. Hopefully none of the gratuitous nudity of the American Pie series, but no promises.
No promises at all. Listen, it's getting to that time of the night as far as I'm concerned. It's early over in Australia though. We should point that out. We're kind of doing the reverse from what we did last time, because I think it was late for you last time, early for me. So this is kind of the return leg. Ange, I guess, is where we should probably start. It's only 4 months since we last spoke. It seems like so much has happened in that time. What have you made of Ange's start to life at Celtic?
I'd imagine hearing Aussies like me tell you guys, I told you so, must be at some level infuriating. But it's turned out kind of exactly how we thought it would. Maybe with the exception of I didn't think people would jump on board with him as quickly as they did. There was obviously that initial period with, was it a couple of 6-0s and some other good results at home and some good football. I think everyone was starting to realise, okay, this guy actually might have an idea about football and how to coach a team. And then has come the dip in the roller coaster, and hopefully we're past that period with that win over Aberdeen, which wasn't pretty, but it was a win, and that's what was needed. It's just all par for the course in the first period of Ange Postecoglou coaching a football team. It's tough. It's going to take some adjustment to get used to the style of football, the demands of this football, the players on an individual level to adjust their own games to fit into this system, and the fans as well to, I guess, put aside that thing in your brain that makes you think that Celtic is, one of the biggest clubs in the world and should be winning every game all the time, no questions asked. Like, you've just got to park that for this period and just wait until the team settles in here. And for me, I mean, there's very clear evidence that the team is building something. You can see it. You can see it in the way they play, if not always the results. You can see it in some of the stats that bear out the performances. The evidence is there. It's just a matter of just sucking up this initial period and waiting for the inevitable moment where it clicks in the team. And when that happens, then it's a lot of fun after that.
We're definitely still waiting in that moment. We've had a couple of moments. The after the Alkmaar game was pretty special. I think you actually messaged me that night with those very words. Told you so. Aberdeen away game, there was only, I think, 1,500 Celtic fans there, but those were good scenes. But I still feel we're waiting on that kind of, I don't know if it's too simplistic to say that moment when everything just kind of falls into place. I don't know if that's how professional sport works, but it feels like we're still just waiting in that collective moment. Has anything surprised you about Ange's start to life at Celtic?
No, not really. I think, as I said before, the only thing that surprised me was how quickly people got on board with him.
Right.
I thought it would be a little bit more of a longer period, that especially since he'd come in as a relative unknown. No one knew anything about him. No one really knew much over there about Australian football or Japanese football. So that surprised me, how quickly some of the initial doubters on social media turned their profile pictures into photos of Ange or Kyogo. That was somewhat surprising, but it's all been par for the course. Because we've seen Ange take over clubs many times in the past, and the template is the same. And I've seen nothing to make me think that the template is going to be any different here. Ange is going to, and probably has, got a couple of things wrong along the journey. He's not infallible, like you mentioned before about the supporters club. And as much as we want, we need him to make this a success for Australian football, it doesn't make the man beyond criticism. There was certainly criticism and rightful criticism of some of the aspects of his latter period with the Socceroos, which I think we might have touched on last time we spoke. And probably I mean, I don't watch the games of Celtic as forensically as you guys. We don't get all of them here, unfortunately. I'm sure there's been selection errors. I'm sure there's been other areas, maybe even transfer errors. Like Carl Stauffer is yet to win me over, that's for sure. There's probably a couple others who people are looking at and having question marks about. But overall, I think the signs are pretty positive. It's just whether Celtic fans have the nerve to be able to wait for success. It's a difficult thing, isn't it, to put your faith in something that you don't know is going to come for sure. That's why, as I just said earlier, like I'm not a religious man for those reasons. I've got a very logical brain.
Yeah,
I need to. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but if it's any comfort from us who have seen Ange's teams progress in the past, it usually ends well.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that in this video. We're basically going to look at some of his first seasons in the past, especially Brisbane Roar, because I think that was probably the biggest job he's done in terms of going into a side that were in dire straits. I think their manager had just left due to a drink driving offence. He turned them into the best Australian club side ever, some say, down your neck of the woods. I think you raise a good point there. I think it's holding your nerves, a good way to put it. I feel generally quite positive about the direction the team's going in under Ange. I think Ange will get it right eventually. The difficult thing is, I think we may well have quite not a painful season, but certain results that are painful this season. We've already had some. Livingston away is the obvious one that comes to mind. Leverkusen, who are a great side, putting 4 past us, still shouldn't be happening to Celtic. So there's been bumps in the road that have been particularly difficult, but I do agree. I think there's a long-term vision there. And last season, we were getting these bad results and there was no vision there. So already you've got an improvement. Should we chat about Brisbane Roar then? I know we're going away back to 2009 when I'm sure you were just a pup. What are your memories of that time?
Yeah, I was. I hadn't started my journalism career really when Ange took over Brisbane Roar. It was shortly afterwards that I did. But you're right, it was Frank Farina, the ex-Brisbane Roar manager, who got done for drink driving and was sacked, unfortunately. And that led to the opportunity for Ange Postecoglou at Brisbane Roar. And I think it was October, I think. So I think the A-League season might have started in August. I'm not too sure. So I think about a third of the season had passed by that point.
I think 10 games had been played. I think he managed 17 and won just 5 of them in that first season. Yeah.
So my memory of that season is not particularly good. I mean, I was 19 at university, so you can fill in the blanks in terms of what I was getting up to, and I was watching football, but certainly not with the level of closeness that I do now. But it wasn't great. And this was way back then when Ange didn't really have the same gravitas about him as he does now. So I guess it was a little bit harder to have that faith for Brisbane fans at the time because you didn't know. I mean, Ange had won 2 titles in the National Soccer League previously before that, but wasn't seen as this sort of really high caliber manager at that point. And so you were going along for the ride, and I think. The difficult thing about that period with Brisbane Roar as well, which is not happening at Celtic, which should give you guys some faith, is that players weren't always on board with this style of play that he was trying to introduce. And that's what led to guys like Craig Moore, Bob Malcolm, I think Charlie Miller might have even been one other ex-Rangers player. I'm not too sure. So these guys left because they didn't want to buy into it. And that's obviously a sign that the manager hasn't won over the dressing room yet, but he got rid of those players and the dressing room was his, and he put his faith in the players who were there, and then the players he brought in for the next season. And like you said, that 5 wins in 17 games, I think it was. So that's his first. That's 2/3 of a season with Brisbane Roar, and they come out the next season and basically blow the league away. I don't think it was from memory. They certainly didn't romp to the title or anything like that. And the final series was certainly nervous. Like they almost lost the semi-final, except for a late equaliser and then a penalty shootout win. But the football was building, and it was incredible. It got better in I think in Ange's 3rd season at Brisbane, when they got onto that 36-game unbeaten streak we've talked about before. But it's a case of waiting for the qualities to bed into the team, and then the moment comes, and then it's irresistible football thereafter. Now, the question for Celtic is it going to take 2/3 of a season? I don't think so, because just because of the nature of the leagues. Like, the A-League has got a salary cap, it's very even. Teams, there's no rich teams that can go out and buy players en masse to change their fortunes. That's not the case in Celtic. Obviously, two teams are heavily imbalanced in terms of resources versus the rest. So you'd like to think that during this period that Celtic are clearly in, that it's not going to plumb those same sort of depths, and that you might be able to pick up enough results through this period to at least be in touch with with Rangers, toward the back end of the season. Give yourselves a chance of the title. Certainly not out of the picture. It's early days, as Ange said recently. You guys write off the season very early compared to the way we do in some other countries. But it's just a matter of time, I think, and it's a matter of, I think, as I said before, how much time Celtic fans are willing to give. And I think, you guys are coming off a real low base, right? A real low base, an exodus of players in the off-season who are important. A back room that's in somewhat of a mess, like a club that's in a mess with board issues, CEO's just gone. Obviously, they weren't quick enough off the mark to bring in players. Ange said that himself. So I think that's got to be weighed against the results as well. Like, it's the team's not going bad because of Ange Postecoglou. I think the team's going bad because they're coming off a pretty bad period, and they just happen to have a manager who takes time to bed in his ideas and theories.
Injuries as well, obviously.
Right.
The last run of games, you'll know yourself, and everyone watching this will know, a crazy amount of injuries, and not just a number of players, key players as well. If you were to pick two players you didn't want to get injured, a couple of months ago, it would be Callum McGregor, the captain, and it would be Kyogo, the best signing, our best player. Both of them pick up injuries. Both of them miss 4 or 5 games. And the team clearly struggled in those 4 or 5 games. I thought there were improvements, even in the 4-0 home defeat to Leverkusen, in the way we played. I thought at times in that game, we moved the ball about well. We looked like a proper team. But I think there's just other parts of the game that we certainly need to work on, the defence being an obvious one. That record at Brisbane Roar, though, is incredible. 36-game unbeaten run. That first season lost just once. The second season, I think they actually finished second in the league, but they won the end of season finals. One thing that did kind of strike out to me when I was looking at their record, they lost that first game after 36 matches. Incredible. And they went on to lose 5 in a row. Is that always, well, in the league, 5 in a row, is that always the kind of the nature of Ange? Is it sometimes kind of famine or feast type football? Or is it just because the Australian league is so kind of even, as you say?
It's so hard to say. Like, it's hard to compare leagues, teams, seasons. I think there's probably elements of everything you've said. I guess also, after coming off 36 games unbeaten, that would have been to keep that going would have been like such a task for the team, like physically, mentally, emotionally, especially when, towards the back end of it, they realised that this streak was going to become, or had a chance to become, the longest in Australian sporting history. When news outlets that don't usually report on football here start taking an interest in what you're doing because it's so big in those historic terms, I reckon that's a big weight to bear as well as a team. And then when it comes undone, I remember watching the game as well where that streak did finish against Sydney FC away here in Cogra in the southern part of Sydney. I'm pretty sure if it wasn't a 1-0 loss, then it was a loss that was decisive based on an early goal, which was from a corner kick, and there was a gale, there was a howling wind that day, and the corner just went in, and no one expected it to, and it was a fluke sort of goal. And from then on, obviously the streak ended, and I can just imagine that the team would have been somewhat, mentally knackered from that, especially after so long as well. But I don't think you can say that that's how Ange's teams work. It's what happened at Brisbane Roar. Unique circumstances, though. I wouldn't have thought that if he goes on a run that you'd expect, if it ends, that it's going to end in multiple losses. I think that's probably unique to that situation.
To be fair, we had a run, I think, of 69 games or something under Brendan Rodgers a few years ago. And after that first loss, 4-0, we lost at Hearts. So the record went up in smoke and we struggled, a lot after that. So there's probably merit in what you're saying in terms of the teams working so hard to keep this record going. And then kind of when that first domino falls, a few more come after it. What about Melbourne victory and the Australian national team? Was it a similar kind of story there? Took a bit of time for them to get things going?
Yeah, Melbourne victory is almost like you got an asterisk next to Melbourne victory in Ange's time in his career, just because he wasn't there for long enough. From memory, I don't think his first season was anything like his first season at Brisbane Roar. Maybe because Melbourne victory at the time was a club in pretty good shape. With better players than most other clubs. Not, Celtic and Rangers versus the rest of the SPL better, but certainly Melbourne Victory are one of the better clubs in the A-League, and they had some talent on the books. I remember Melbourne Victory playing some classic Ange Postecoglou football, and I don't think it took them very long to get used to it. Socceroos, a little bit different. I think there were some early... He took over just before the World Cup as well, so there would have been only a few handful of games where he got his hands on the team, and it's a teething period there as well. That's I guess the thing that corresponds with everywhere he's gone, bar maybe victory. And the World Cup itself was 2014 in Brazil. It's somewhat kamikaze football, except it worked. I think we were leading the Netherlands at one point. Didn't come away from the tournament with any points from memory, but you could see it was building,
Tim Cahill scored an absolute belter in that game, didn't he?
One of the all-time greats as well. Good cross from Ryan McGowan too. Full credit to Gowser. He did well there.
Brilliant. Yokohama F. Marinos, I think, same story. They finished 12th in the first season, won the league the next year. So there is a pattern there of if you give Ange time, he will get it right. Is it as simple as time? Is that all Ange needs? Does he obviously needs a bit more money, I think, in January to further strengthen the squad. I think the starting lineup, if you look at it, if everyone's fit, is relatively strong. I just think we maybe need more Ange players in the squad. I sometimes think he looks to his bench and he doesn't have the players that he maybe trusts to bring on and change a game, or even the players that can play Ange's system all season long. I think it's fine doing it in August and September even, when the sun's out, the pitches are good. We're yet to see what will happen in, we don't play games really in January, but December, February, March, when the pitches are struggling, it's a bit colder. But I think if we give Ange the backing in January, bring the players in, I think it will work. But is it as simple as that in time, or is there... and this will kind of fall into place for Ange, or is there any kind of hidden stuff that Celtic fans should know about?
I think it is just a matter of time, and also taking into account Celtic's unique circumstances, like you need players. The depth's not there, as you mentioned, with injuries. As soon as there's a couple, it exposes that lack of depth. So I think it's a matter of time. It's also a matter of getting in a few more players to make sure that you can get through those weeks where you're playing 3 games a week, without dropping points or going away from the style or anything like that. Why would it be any different? Look, maybe it's hard for people in Scotland to sometimes get that point because you've not seen too much Aussie football, Japanese football, Socceroos playing under Ange, but we've seen it. It happens. It's the same game in a different country. Why would it not be? I just can't see any red flags or reasons to think that it's not going to work out, especially since at the moment it seems like all the Celtic players who are there are trying their absolute best. There's no dissent. There's no one who thinks this football is a bad idea, that they don't believe in it. And I think there's evidence in the way the team is playing as well that there's some good stuff building in there. There comes a point in everywhere that Ange has gone where the players, they go along with it. And at some point, there's usually, a miracle result, a late winner, some sort of big event or moment where they stick to the style, even if the logical part of their brain will tell them this isn't getting us anywhere. And it yields something. It yields a result. And that becomes like a moment of realization where the whole group sees that if we do what the boss says, if we do what Ange says, the dividends are actually going to come. He's been telling us all along, and here's our first example. I'm sure that moment will come at some point for Celtic. When it comes, I don't know.
Did it come
no
at
one knows.
Pittodrie against Aberdeen?
Maybe. I don't know if that was enough of that sort of breakthrough moment. It didn't feel like it. It just felt like a win they needed to have. I'm thinking more along the lines of I don't know, like a game where they're dominating possession, they're not getting the final product, and the tendency in that sort of game, I would have thought, is to when the clock's running down, is to go long. You know, go and do the things that make sense in that moment. The short term thinking, belt the ball long out of defence, or throw in a speculative cross. But if you don't do that, and if you stick to the style, I think that's the kind of moment I think that will come. It's happened before. I think at Yokohama there was I remember talking to some other guys on the staff who were there with Ange. I think it was an away win to Urawa Red Diamonds. That was their moment. I'd have to go through the Brisbane Roar games in sort of forensic detail to understand when that moment came for them. It might have even been in that changeover pre-season, you know, when Ange brought in more players. But it comes. I'm sure it will come at Celtic. I can't see why it wouldn't. Like the league is not that different. Like it's not. The Japanese league is a fantastic standard as well. Scottish league is probably close to it. Just why wouldn't it come? I can see it building right now. It's
You've
just a
done it
matter
again,
of
everyone. You just fill me with so much confidence every time you speak, Vince. I'm loving it.
Well, it's just a matter of you guys, you know, and like I know Celtic is a huge club, and you should be at the top of the Premier League, you know, and you should be competing for titles every year. But I think there needs to just be an acceptance of where you're coming from, how much work needs to be done to get you back to where you think you should be from where you actually are. And then when you understand, accept that, then I think everything else flows on, because you've got a manager who's in the door right now who must have told the board, this is going to take some time. It's clearly going to take some time, but you can see it. If you couldn't see it, then I'd understand the nervousness, but you can see it. And I just don't see why you wouldn't get excited by it. It's just, it's about swallowing pride and being patient, which sucks. I mean, Ange would not want to be patient either. He'd want to be winning games straight away, but it's delayed gratification. And it's whether you guys are up for the ride. I think you are, most of you anyway.
100%. What's the alternative? Is it to bin Ange after a few bad results and bring in Gordon Strachan or someone like that who would just, you know, have no vision for the future?
That's exactly right. Like, what would getting rid of him at this point achieve other than to take you even further backwards? You'd actually be starting from behind where you were this pre-season, you know, because you'd have a new manager who'd want to bring in his players, different style. You'd be starting all over again in the middle of a season. It just makes no sense. I think if Celtic fans accept where they are today, it's easier to digest this difficult period, and I'm sure at some point the rewards will come.
I think in general the Celtic support are still fully behind Ange, and I think there's only the kind of the daft elements who are even, you know, pondering the possibility that he should be sacked or whatever at this stage. I think it would have to get a lot worse before anyone else really considered that, because I think we can see generally what Ange is trying to do, and I think you raise a great point that the players are all buying into it. I don't see any evidence, any player really, maybe other than one, Albin Ayeti, that isn't properly buying into the way Ange wants to play, you know, passing out from the back. Even players like Anthony Ralston, who we'd all written off in the past, has become, you know, a player who can play in Ange's system. So they're all buying into it, and hopefully the results follow. What have you made of Ange's relationship with the Scottish press so far?
It's been entertaining, that's for sure. And again, somewhat predictable, because that's just how Ange is. He's doesn't give heaps away. I I think you would have noticed when people are asking him about transfers and stuff, he doesn't confirm anything, he doesn't deny anything, he keeps it open, he knows exactly what to say. And when someone, as we Aussie journalists have plenty of experience around, if we throw him a stupid question, he will treat it like a stupid question and slam dunk you. Like he will give you the answer it deserves. It's been hilarious at times. But if I was a Celtic fan, I'd be thrilled with the way he's dealt with some of those questions, because he's given them the correct response. You know, he stood up for himself, his beliefs. He's not going to be pressured into thinking, do I change things or anything like that. He's his own man, and he's shown that. And I think the Scottish media, to some extent, see that and respect it as well at this point. That's not to say that there's not people who are trying to trip him up. That's probably the job of journalists sometimes, is to rattle the cage and criticize and analyze. But if you do that in the wrong way, or you don't have your evidence behind you, or if you don't have your ducks in a row when you're going to challenge him, then he'll smack you back, which is fair enough, I reckon.
Yeah, and he did that right from the start, didn't he, at that first press conference, when I think it was one of the guys from the BBC spoke about the step up coming to Scotland, and he told them, you know, in no uncertain terms, I've managed at a World Cup. So no, I love him. I love the way he comes across. He's just so kind of blunt. I don't know if that's a great word to describe him, but he doesn't really believe in fairy tales or magic happening. He's just so kind of straight. This is how things will work, and this is why it will work. And I think the Celtic fans have taken to it as well. You know, when we went through that run of about 4 or 5 home games in a row, when the team was playing well, he honestly had, you know, hero status here that I hadn't seen since even Brendan Rodgers. And even Brendan Rodgers, who was a hero when he managed here, I felt Ange was just a little bit above him for whatever reason, just because I think, as you said back in June, he takes you on this journey with him, and I certainly felt that. Are you guys been kind of kept abreast of what's happening? Do you ever get an opportunity to chat to Ange? I know you had one right at the start when he came into the club.
No, we've not. The guy's had a fair bit on his plate, so I've left him alone for a little while. But we're always checking in. Unfortunately, the broadcast situation here is such that we don't get every Celtic game, at least the domestic games. We get all the Europa stuff, of course, but we don't get to watch every game. The ones we do, fortunately, Old Firm and Aberdeen were both on at a good time here in Australia. I think they're like 9, 10 o'clock on a Sunday from memory, which is really doable. It's been great. But just every morning, I think most football fans in our social feeds, some form of Celtic news will filter through, and everyone who takes an interest in football in Australia is keeping an eye on this. I guess with the expectation that it's going to end well. I've got that expectation. It'd be hard for you guys to understand because you just didn't experience it, but we've been through this, you know, and we see the parallels. We see, it's a template that we've seen followed previously, executed previously, and every single time an Ange Postecoglou team ends up lifting a trophy and being hailed as a fantastic team to watch. And as I said before, I've just got no reason to think that won't be the case here. Like, I think he's shown, everyone was worried about the pressure of coaching Celtic, or the pressure of being in this fishbowl environment. Well, I think the way he's dealt with himself so far certainly shows that that's not going to be an issue that overwhelms him. And there's no doubt about that. He's clearly proved himself equal to it. And so therefore, what evidence is there to think it's not going to end that way, you know? I mean, Rangers will have a say, obviously. They're a strong club. They know what they're doing. But so does Ange. It's just going to be great to watch, I think. Are they going to challenge for the title this year? Who knows? Next year, I'd expect that'd be right up there for sure. But for us, we're definitely, I personally am just loving being glued to this one.
I've got a wee analogy. This might be absolutely terrible, but it's like when you're learning to ride your bike or a bike, and your dad is teaching you and you're not quite getting it right. You've got the stabilizers on, you keep falling off, your feet aren't fitting in the pedals, and your dad's saying, just stick with it, it'll come good, you'll get it eventually. And then you get it eventually, and hopefully we're just at that stage at the moment where Ange is just learning how to ride his bike.
Yeah, I used a similar one recently. It's like going on a roller coaster. And the first time I went on one, not long into it, I was like, why the hell did I get on this roller coaster? This is not fun. This is scary. I'm upside down. I'm used to being upside down. This is wrong. And then you just suck it up and you get off the roller coaster and it's like, well, actually, that was loads of fun. I don't know what I was scared of. It's a bit like that at the moment. At the moment, Celtic are upside down on the roller coaster. Or maybe they're just coming out of the first loop. I don't know. But it's a roller coaster. And that means after the dips, there's going to be some climbs and there's going to be some enthralling moments. I think roller coaster, bike, call it what you want. I think it's pretty obvious that we're in that initial period. But you can see, if you couldn't see evidence of something building, then I'd understand being apprehensive or scared or worried. But you can. And I think you can see the conviction in the bloke, the way he speaks and carries himself. And so I think it's just a matter of accepting it for what it is. He's already in the door. He's already working. Just let him work. Be patient. Hopefully you won't have to be too patient. And the good times are going to be just ahead.
Indeed. Vince, you live in Australia. You should be used to being upside down. But you kind of let me tap that one in myself. Your next invite on to 67 Hail Hail is a title party in May, so just sort that in your wee diary. Vince, it's been great to have you on the channel again. Thanks so much, and all the best.
Thanks, mate. Absolute pleasure.